Mangozo has asked a question here and just reminded me that I hadn't answered the question. So apologies for that, Mangozo. Humblest apologies. How do you deal with the lack of confidence in yourself, which comes from failing a module, and now you feel like you're the dumbest person in the room and you get so anxious you can't even function? So from my quick 2 cents worth, Mangozo, you are not, if this has happened to you, you're not. You're bright, you're unique, you're a creation, you're special, you're loved, you're part of this community. We want you to succeed and we want you to get through this. Melissa, your thoughts?
When something goes wrong academically, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So you need to look at what else has been going on. If you were taking care of a sick parent, for example, and you couldn't give time to your studies, where is your attention appropriately going? So is it a case of something else had gone on in your life and you had to prioritize? As a lecturer, I once had a student whose dad had passed away and she was left looking after an infant and she wasn't coping with university. So we made a plan to extend her program, to get her tutoring, to get her the help she needed, because sometimes university can't be your first priority. And we need to understand, in a post-pandemic world, we're in a global crisis. We're facing anxiety and depression, and not all university structures, my current one included, have taken into account the stress of dealing with life and still expect distinctions and still expect you to make deadlines because you're at home now. So what else are you going to be doing except a lot? So what else is going on? This doesn't happen in a vacuum. Then failure, it's not disaster. Failure is feedback. Feedback is information, and information is power, because once you have information, it gives you options to do differently. When a behavior isn't serving us, so if this is a case of, I'm a 3 a.m. crammer and that didn't work for me, I know now that I should maybe start revising earlier. If this was a case of, I only took notes in class but didn't do revision, now I know I need to revise my notes. So this gives you feedback into your process. It is not a comfortable way to learn about your process, but at least you're given the opportunity to learn about your process. Failure is feedback. And if we can frame it that way, it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on process. We can also ask, did you receive the teaching that you needed? Because some people learn better in certain modalities than others. Did you get the support that you needed? Failure, in this sense, I feel like you're taking responsibility for something that I obviously don't know the context, but there's more to it. And if you feel like you're the dumbest person in the room, that to me speaks of a really loud self-critic and a really hard drive towards perfectionism. And that just sounds absolutely exhausting. Something that I've had to come to terms with in my studies is that sometimes my effort is good enough. And good enough doesn't necessarily mean a distinction. Sometimes good enough is just getting through. And if I know that I've put in my personal best effort, I know that I can be content with enough and that I'm not the dumbest person in the room. I worked my ass off for what I got. However, that being said, personal best looks different on different days. Now, I have depression. I do depression. I have diagnosis. There's a lot of play around the wording we choose because I don't want to have the label because labels are bad, but I've got this depression situation. I have 2.5 jobs. I'm still trying to be a full-time student. And I have a dog who's reasonably needy and neurotic. So it's a funny example, but it's true. She takes an incredible amount of my time. So when it comes to finishing readings for my Thursday morning class, sometimes I don't make it through. And I'm the student who loves to be prepared and have all my notes color-coded. I used to be that student, but my priorities look a bit different now. So I know if I can do 90% of the readings, I got through the prescribed, if not the recommended, but I did the best I could that day, but I'm honest about that, then that's enough. So whatever the situation is, bring it back to personal effort. And if the feedback you're getting on your personal effort says that you need to make more effort, grab the opportunity and make more effort. If the feedback is about process that you weren't in control of, you need to communicate that because you need support. And let's get you the support you need to support your process, because academia doesn't happen in a vacuum just from the student. There's more at play.
And I think using that point that you made about failure is feedback, move beyond the emotional attachment that you might have to failure, or that is placed on you by parents and community and expectations and pressure of life, etc. And although that may be your initial reaction, as Mongozo indicated just now, move from failure to feedback, and feedback then becomes a lot more objective in terms of actions that you can take to work on and put into a process to respond to that unfortunate and unpleasant event of failing something, but then learning from it and taking action and improving as a result of that feedback, and not giving up as a result of it being a failure. It's hard to do, but I like the language that you've used there, because it talks to a lot of what I've coached the students on this community about, in terms of whatever that action looks like and however hard it is to take, whether it's an inch or a step or a meal or an hour's sleep, that action is going to, and what I often say to students is a PhD or a master's is a series of actions. It's a series of steps. There's no silver bullet. There's no one day that suddenly you overcome all the challenges of a PhD. It's just a day by day, task by task thing. So whether you eat frogs for breakfast, which is that point that you raised earlier, do the hardest thing as early as you can in the day, or burn your boats like the person who did in the Facebook group and said, I'm going to study these 3 law units by the end of the day yesterday, and she did, and we congratulated in the Facebook group. Or whether you take the feedback from that failure and you attach some actions to it, and then you burn your boats around those actions. So come into the Facebook group. I put the link in the chat there and say, Mongozo, like you did, I failed, but I've converted into feedback. These are the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things I'm going to do. I'm going to complete these actions, help me and encourage me to get there. And then I'll reassess when I get through those actions. I'm not going to continually second guess myself and reassess through that process. I'm going to trust the process, take the action, and that momentum, should build the confidence back up again. Do you agree?
Absolutely. 100%. Taking steps. I'm in a session, Lance. Sorry about that.
Life happens.
There's a sign on the door. Anyway, yes. Trust the process. Trust your own process. I think the hardest lesson for me during this round of studies in psychology is that I am no one's expert. I'm only my own expert. You know what works for you. You also know the frogs you have to eat, you know the boats you have to burn, and you know what you really don't want to do, but that you should probably be doing. Nobody thinks that a binge, if you're going to eat a binge pile of food, is healthy. You know it's not healthy. Why are you doing it anyway? What's the payoff? So we need to look at what is the payoff to our behaviors that are serving us, and what's the payoff to the behaviors that are not serving us. Second guessing ourselves almost gives us a loophole to not start something because we're going to fail at it anyway. And I failed the last one, so I'm definitely not going to give it my all now. It creates a excuse. And in NLP, we have a meta pattern called the excuse blowout pattern, where we look at what is that about? Is there a fear of failure? What does that fear give you? Oh, it allows me not to try. What does not trying give you? If I don't try, I won't fail. What does not failing give you? Oh, it means I'm good. But isn't there another way you could be good? Wouldn't you be even better if you actually tried? Wouldn't you exceed your own expectations if you just applied the things that you're good at to this? And then we can suddenly reframe experiences. But if we second guess and do micromanagement of the process without trusting it, we stop ourselves short. You quit before the magic happens, and that's not worth it. So trust the process, and trust people who are slightly more objective to the process than yourself, because sometimes we need a reality check. Yes, I am my own expert, but I'm also caught up in all my drama in my head and my anxiety. So then I can come to a coach or a community like this and say, is what I'm saying making sense? And then checking in, is this just my anxiety, or is the subject actually really hard and I need a tutor, kind of thing? So have a reality check, but trust. Well, trust but verify, I suppose, is the point. But second guessing a process means you're never going to get anywhere. Just flow as the wave.